quite a long time, and Black Sabbath would go through some changes. I'm going through changes became kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so let's go to the next chapter, which happens actually in the next year. And if we thought that bringing Dio on board was weird, then just imagine how weird it was to bring in Ian Gillan of Deep Purple. And this happens in late 82 or so. 82, let us not forget that Deep Purple was still not reunited, and there was no reunion on the horizon. Blackmore was doing very well with Rainbow. Actually, Roger Glover had joined him in there. Maybe that might have been some sort of indication. Lord was doing his own thing. Pice was with Gary Moore and Whitesnake. And Gillan broke up his band. He had some good guitarist, Bernie Tormé, in that band. And somehow, I don't even know how that happened, but he does get an offer from Black Sabbath. Not a combination that you would normally think about. Again, before it happens. Even today, it's considered weird. But be it as it may, they do record and release an album. It's called Born Again. And when I first saw that record, I looked at the record cover and I said, what is this? I didn't know if I loved it or hated it. It has this real evil looking baby, kind of born again. Of course I picked it up, Black Sabbath. If it has Black Sabbath on it, you pick it up and bring it home, right? And I put it on and it starts playing and I go, what is this? Is this thrash metal? Did they make a mistake in the studio? The sound just doesn't sound good. Doesn't sound normal. I don't know if they wanted it to be like this. I don't know if something went wrong, but something with that sound is very, very weird. Now I got used to it because I listened to that record so many times, but it wasn't love at first sight. It also wasn't hate at first sight. It just kind of didn't make sense at first sight. And there is an instrumental part, very short, just about 2 minutes, Stonehenge, which is kind of mostly a subdued melody, which is pretty good. So that kind of gave me a breather from the opening track, Thrashed. Trashed, I'm sorry, but in my mind it was like thrashed. Like, what are they trying to do, thrash metal, or what are they, like became like Metallica? But with Stonehenge I kind of calmed down, and then came Disturbing the Priest, which is no less weird than Thrashed, but let's just say the good parts, the quality of the song and everything becomes much more evident than on Trashed. Then there is another kind of, it's just mostly just like noises with the bass guitar, instrumental introduction. I don't know why it's credited separately, but then you got Zero the Hero, another very good song. And then you have side 2, which is also pretty weird. They're like shorter songs that are, I don't know if they meant to be, but they sound like they are trying to be or want to be more commercial, maybe more radio friendly, but they're not. There was the same crazy corrupted or wrong sound. So it's a little bit difficult to get into this record. At least it was for me. The 2 big songs definitely are Disturbing the Priest and Zero the Hero. The opener, Trashed, I think is up to personal taste. I kind of got used to it, but I'm still not a huge fan. And then on on side 2, most of the records, most of the songs, I'm sorry, like I told you, are kind of shorter songs that are maybe intended or wanting to sound like something a little bit more accessible, if you will, with the exception of the title track, which I like a lot. So the title track belongs kind of in that family of Zero the Hero, Disturbing the Priest, but it's like it's a slower number, and kind of has a plaintive dirge, kind of lament kind of aspect to it, and a little bit going back to the first record, kind of these doomy, heavy riffs. So that's that for Born Again. It's a good record and in some ways a bad record together. It's definitely weird. Gillan's voice, matches and doesn't match the music all at the same time. It kind of doesn't make sense, but it doesn't. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, just listen to the record. I like it. I like the record, definitely. It's not a bad record. A lot of people hate it. I don't. And after the tour, where Gillan does some Deep Purple songs, you gotta hear, if you can get the. I mean, they are online, so there are some pretty good versions of Smoke on the Water, and I don't know if they did something. They might have done some other, maybe from Gillan's band, but they did some real funky and interesting stuff. I don't think they did. Maybe they did Dio songs. I don't know. Actually, they did. I'm almost positive that there is a version of Heaven and Hell with Dio on it, which is with Gillan on it, which is insane. But Gillan was good there. If you can find, and they are out there on the internet, go out and find the bootlegs with the live recordings with Gillan. They are pretty good, actually very good. So after Gillan leaves and goes back to Deep Purple, Black Sabbath are high and dry again. Oh, and I forgot to say another very, very important aspect of Born Again is that Bill Ward came back for a while. I forgot already under what circumstances, but he wasn't happy at the end of the first tour with Dio after Heaven and Hell. He wasn't happy that it wasn't Ozzy, and maybe because of the animosity between Ozzy and Dio, he had some personal things. He left, and then Vinny came in. But for Born Again, Bill Ward came back once more. So if you're a big fan of Bill Ward, then you gotta listen to Born Again, because it's definitely a very Bill Wardish drumming in there. So that alone might be worth the record, right? But again, Gillan leaving and going back to Deep Purple closes another chapter, another weird and short chapter in the long and tortuous history of Black Sabbath. After their long run with the first lineup, they had very few stable lineups in the rest of their history. So the post 80, you got Dio, who stayed for about 2-3 years maybe, and then you had Gillan for 1 or 2 years, let's just say late 82 to early 84 when he left and eventually went back to Deep Purple. And then we have a long silence, a relatively long silence from Black Sabbath, 3 years. Something like this never happened in the history of the band. They skipped 77 and 74 with a studio album, but I'm sure that there were bootlegs and compilations and whatnot coming out in those years, so they weren't really away until this time. Iommi is alone. Butler and Ward leave the band or just do other things. Maybe they didn't formally leave. But Iommi is about to release a solo album, which in the end the record company pressures him into doing under the name Black Sabbath, so it comes out as Black Sabbath featuring Tony Iommi. And the record is this guy, the Seventh Star. Another record that a lot of fans and a lot of, I imagine, journalists love to hate, and I love to love. Great record. I love the cover photo. Very, very indicative of what's inside. I once read a whole article about the motif around the photograph, which is also on the inner sleeve. This one, and I'll show you the inner sleeve, you might see it better, but you can look it up for yourself. There's kind of a funky drawing here like this with all kinds of monsters. Actually, I was wrong. There was another cool little monster here. I was wrong. I don't know why I misremembered that the inside sleeve, maybe there was a different edition, but or maybe it's the same drawing. I don't remember. This what is being used for the frame of this photograph is some artwork. It's called maybe The Sufferings of Saint Anthony, and it has, for some reason, it has some sort of weird connection with the record and the music. But surprisingly enough, to me, this is a banger of an album. Now remember, this is 1986, and yes, it sounds it doesn't sound like Twisted Sister or Motley Crue, but it's not super far removed from that either. So, but it doesn't have the commercial element, interestingly and surprisingly enough. It has the kind of that metallic, smoothened out 80s heavy metal guitar, but the songs are one after the other bangers. Really, really, really great. Danger Zone, freaking banger of this of a song. In for the Kill, the title song 7 Star. So it has a little bit of mix. You got these fast and hard ones, kind of like a Heaven and Hell brought up to date in the mid second half of the 80s. But Danger Zone, In for the Kill, Turn to Stone, kind of the fast heavy metal kind of songs, and then you get the bluesy plaintive lament ones, No Stranger to Love, In Memory, Angry Heart kind of sort of belongs in there, 7 Star, like a doomy one a little bit, Heart Like a Wheel, and the vocalist is again an unlikely and unexpected one, and also from Deep Purple, the one and only Glenn Hughes, who can sing. He can sing. That guy is definitely in the top singers. Very, very good singer. Although I'm not a huge fan of his voice, but he's an excellent singer. Always on point, always in time. Really cool. And unfortunately, he was too sick, too stoned out of his mind to be able to play bass on this record, because that would have been an interesting marrying. Although it could have also brought to the whole project falling apart if Iommi wasn't in that funky stuff, which I don't see how they would have made it fit here. But again, you wouldn't know until you'd hear it. But at this point in time, Glenn Hughes also guested on a Gary Moore record a little bit, but again, he was not up to playing bass, unfortunately. But he does one heck of a job singing here. The voice and the music fit very well, and the music is very, very good. And like I said, to me, it sounds like a modernized Heaven and Hell. I might be overselling the record, but those who are not familiar with the record would do themselves a great favor and become familiar with it. And this record also introduces a very, very good drummer, although on the record itself you don't hear it that much, that good. I guess they told him just to go straight ahead and not to do anything too creative, but still a good drummer with very good energy, very good beat, very good rhythm, very good timing. Eric Singer, who ended up in Kiss in the end, but shortly afterwards he did the famous tour with Gary Moore, and man, he was on fire on that tour, and he stayed with them for at least for the next record, if I am not mistaken. But that closes the chapter on Seventh Star. Again, another one album run of an era or a period in Black Sabbath. And that opens the door to the Tony Martin era. Tony Martin is an interesting character. In some ways, he reminds me of Fish from Marillion. A lot of similarities, a lot of differences. Again, a good lyrics writer. He's a good singer. I think he has a fairly good voice, and he sings well, and the voice matches the music pretty well. The big problem with Tony Martin is that he has absolute zero stage presence. Or maybe I should say not zero, but minus. He detracts. He just looks awkward. He walks and moves awkwardly. It just, you know, when you saw Dio and Ozzy and Gillan, they just live into the music. They blend into that whole scenery of the stage, the drums and the guitars and the piano, if there is one, and the voice. And they just, their movement, their mannerisms, their interaction with the audience, like that's what great frontmen do, right? Unfortunately, Tony Martin has less than zero of that, like minus charisma, you know. So I think that worked against him, and of course, Black Sabbath fans being very opinionated and having to belong to either the Dio or the Ozzy camp, but both of them agree that they hate Tony Martin, which is unfortunate, not only for Tony Martin, but even for Black Sabbath, because they were very unpopular and obscure at the time, and the records weren't halfway bad. So you had Eternal Idol and Headless Cross and Tire, and great records. My favorite from the Tony Martin era, and there's going to be one in the future, but let's just say the first Tony Martin era to me is hands down Eternal Idol. Eternal Idol is a great record, even though a lot of fans don't like it. I love it. I love it pretty much beginning to end. It has one of these great signature Iommi instrumentals, Scarlet Pimpernel, kind of in some ways, reminding of Orchid and Embryo from Master of Reality, and he does it from time to time, and it's good. He doesn't drag it out for 6 minutes, right? It's a one or 2 minute nice little melody, a nice little idea, throws it out there and finished, and it's nice, and it has a good tone and good sound, good amplitude to it. I love those. Which songs do I don't like from Eternal Idol? Let's just say you got the title track, which closes the record, Eternal Idol, and you have another one like that, Ancient Warrior. So both of them kind of slower tempo songs that don't have too many interesting things going for them and kind of drag out, kind of like Judas Priest's Loch Ness, that just, you know, a long song for the sake of being long. The solos are not bad in the middle, but they kind of get lost in the boredom. But other than that, the songs are bangers, one after the other. I love Lost Forever, Nightmare. The other singer was Born to Lose. The Shining, the opening song, very, very good. Glory Ride. Hard Life to Love, possibly my favorite song from the record. Very, very, very good record. It shares a lot of, if you would going to pair it with another record which is not from the first Tony Martin era, I would say it shares a lot of similarities with the previous one, with Seventh Star. Similar vibe, similar sound with the guitar, and again has Eric Singer on the drums. Next up, they release another one that a lot of fans warmed up, maybe not immediately, but with time, because they had a very, very cool duo for the rhythm section, namely Cozy Powell and Neil Marie. who work together now for the second time and are going to work together at that time about a decade later. They were together in Whitesnake, and they were going to be together on Peter Green's Splinter Group, another phenomenal chapter in the history of music. But it was well, actually, I'm not sure if Neil Murray really played on this one. I might be mistaken, but they did. I think on the next one it was Neil Murray, but on Headless Cross there was a one Lawrence Cottle, whom I don't know really from other places. Headless Cross is one that a lot of Black Sabbath fans love to love, in large part because of Cozy, because he really kills it. And the album is good. It gets to be even smoother on the guitar, and the metallic guitar sound. So on the 80s, and towards on the way out of the 80s, they become very 80s, but not in a bad way, actually, in a good way. Great sounding, but super smooth metallic guitar. Think kind of Judas Priest or American heavy metal bands like Wasp or Motley Crue. That sort of feel with the guitar. The big one is Nightwing, where I think Brian May guests on a solo. Black Moon, great songs. Most of the songs are really good. Headless Cross, Devil and Daughter. So a good record, but still in my mind, I would still take the previous one, Eternal Idol, over it, as well as the next one, Tire. That's the one with Neil Murray. I'm sorry, a very good record. I love Tire. I love pretty much all of the songs. Again, it very much belongs in that trio. So definitely Eternal Idol, Headless Cross, and Tire are kind of one unit, one family of records. Some may say a little bit too repetitive, too similar to each other. I don't necessarily agree. Look at the front cover for Tire. Very beautiful. I love this. The Irish motive, wide Irish motive into a thinner Irish knot motive, and cool little motive there on the corner, and two beautiful photographs again in a very good. I love this kind of like Johnny the Fox on Thin Lizzy also has this. Just great songs. Feel Goods to me, kind of like a metal ballad almost, you know, in a Sabbath way. Heaven in Black, great song. Odin's Court and Valhalla, The Battle of Tyre is the instrumental introduction to it. They're all good. Jerusalem, great song. The Sabbath Stones, Lawmaker, Anno Mundi, kind of the introduction to the whole record, and the first song. So I really have nothing against this record. It sounds good. It's got great people. Might be a little bit too 80-ish, although it was released in 90. And then again, another chapter closes. Dio is not happy with how his record Lock Up the Wolves came out. It's a whole other story. Don't want to start getting out in a tangent about it. But I think that record is better than its reputation. It deserves an extra listen. But it's not an easy listen. It's not what Dio fans expected. So kind of Dio falls. I think that his drummer Simon Wright went over to AC/DC, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, he decides to fold Dio, and he reaches out to Butler, and of course Iommi is not super happy, I'm sure, with the fame and fortune, lack of fame and fortune of the current version of Black Sabbath with Tony Martin, and so they all reunite, and in 1992 they release this little baby, Dehumanizer. Another record that kind of goes both ways. Another one on which I think that the sound went bad, or something is gone wrong. I think that they had maybe they relied on the studio or the engineers or the producers too much. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but the record doesn't sound right. Even though the record is great, or at least potentially, they could re-record it or something. They always do that. They pull out an old record and they go, it's a remastered and remixed, and then it sounds pretty much the same. But definitely this record could sound better. But also some of the songs themselves are not on par with what you'd expect from people like Iommi, Butler, and Dio, and Vinny Appice. All in all, I think it's a good record, or at least it has a few kick-ass songs. Master of Insanity, easily the best songs from the record. Yes, and Master of Insanity. Buried Alive is not bad, but they have a little too much of these kind of doomy. Iommi is kind of trying to recreate the mood and the vibe of the first record, or Black Sabbath, and let's just say Master of Reality, and it doesn't work that well. Dio and this kind of music is not made for that. So besides for these two obvious insane records, as far as TV Crimes, which was a single if I'm not mistaken, the Computer God, the opener, is not halfway bad, but not insanely great. And After All the Dead, it's good, but it's kind of a little bit meandering, doesn't really go nowhere very decisively. And you could say it about all of the songs, with Letters from Earth, a little bit too similar to After All. And again, Time Machine's not bad. Sins of the Father is then okay, and then Too Late. A little bit lack of variation on this record. So the third studio album with Dio, and I think that compared to what one would and definitely should expect, I think that this is considered a letdown. So, and of course, the famous incident with Dio refusing to open for Ozzy at some big festival in California. They wanted to do two parts, so the band would have stayed on stage with Dio and do some Sabbath Dio era songs, and then Ozzy Osbourne would come on stage, and Dio said, no way, I'm not opening for a clown. And of course, the media attacked him, calling him Ronnie James Ego. Look, they have a point. They have a point. I mean, you can't force him to open for Ozzy, but you don't necessarily have to agree with him. Was it the wrong decision? I don't know. It was certainly the right decision for Rob Halford, who got a gig of a lifetime and made history. At least that. We've got Deep Purple vocalists in Deep Purple, and now we got a Priest vocalist, and Halford did pretty good. Unfortunately, the existing recordings are crap. It's a pity it wasn't professional recorded, and Halford pulled off a pretty nasty tricks there. He said that Judas Priest is going to ride again, which he didn't really mean. But anyway, who knows? Maybe they were trying behind the scenes. But anyway, the Dio era, the second Dio era of Black Sabbath came to an end, and a pretty nasty and contentious end. And then they went into another era, another Tony Martin era. But before we turn the page on that, let's go back to King Crimson. Fripp again wakes up and again wants to wake up the sleeping giant that is King Crimson, and again recruits mostly first-time musicians. Well, I'm sorry, not yet. So you get Bruford, who was from the first iteration of the band, and he takes Tony Levine and Adrian Belew from the second iteration of the band, and two other new musicians, Pat Mastalotto, an insane drummer, and Trey Gunn. So now this is kind of maybe the idea, the embryonic idea started in Three of a Perfect Pair, with the two drums talking to each other. And he puts this new iteration of King Crimson together, releasing THRAK. THRAK is definitely a difficult to digest record. So if you're coming in here expecting anything like Red or Court of a Crimson King or even Discipline or even Three of a Perfect Pair, you're in for a rude awakening. It's difficult to eat this record. It's difficult to digest it. It's definitely not one of my favorites. It has its moment, but there is a lot of Steve Reich kind of experimentation, things that are not really music in the common sense, in a very professional, scientific, rhythmical sense. Yes, the musical pieces have titles. I would have just named them THRAK Part A, B, C, D, something like that. But again, the songs have titles, but they're almost immaterial. It's I think that more than any King Crimson record, well, really they all, not all, but they very much are like this, from Larktongues in Aspic. Well, Larktongues in Aspic, yes, but then the next two, you could kind of break them down in individual songs in a realistic or logical manner. But Beat and Three of a Perfect Pair, and in some sense even Discipline, have to be listened to as a unit, as an album. And the THRAK, definitely a lot of instrumental tracks. What's worth listening here, the whole thing. I don't know if I want to pick up any individual tracks. You got the Boom and THRAK. Again, if you're into that kind of things, Inner Garden, maybe here and there you got some segments. You know, they do this again, that the rhythmical build up to the song that takes a little bit too long, very repetitive, very monotonic, and then they go into the madness of the songs. Anyway, not the best King Crimson record by any means. And the next one, I think that Fripp went in a slightly different direction.